Hi, hope you're well. I got a new mic today, so hopefully there's a good difference in that. We'll see. But today, for the video, we are going to be talking about something that's kind of local to where I live, my town specifically. I mentioned it briefly in the video I made, Weird Things About My Local Park, and that is about a classic disappearance case that's happened around here. You'll have to forgive me if I leave out some certain pictures or names for my own privacy, just because this story takes place so close to where I live. But I think what's the most interesting about this story is the fact that it's such a classic missing persons case in the way that one minute he was here and then the next minute he was gone without a trace. While it is shrouded in local legend, it turns out this case is actually rooted in truth. This wasn't something I really knew about. The only way I've ever heard about this case was through my parents or my mother telling me, oh hey, don't go off into the woods alone, or else you'll end up missing like this one person did. But my friend Jason actually went to the local library. They have a microfiche there, some archive of newspapers where we can read about some 30-plus-year-old history from the town. He actually dug up something about this, and sure enough, it's something that actually happened. Thank you, by the way, Jason, if you're watching this. You are officially the saving grace of my channel. I would not be able to make this video without you. Something that also separates this from other missing cases in my town is the fact that there really isn't any evidence or any more popularly believed theories for what happened to this guy. I know there's a lot of missing children's cases that have happened throughout the decades, and a lot of them have evidence in the way of, missing stuffed animals from the kids or missing backpacks. It's kind of clear they were runaways, but this is definitely not that clear cut. This person in question goes by the name of Jake Walker. The time is 1997, and he's just gone through the motions of high school, starting college. He's actually gotten the jump of moving out of his parents' house already, and he lives in an apartment by the park. He stays in the area, but even his father attests that he kind of keeps to himself as much as he can. He's a loner of sorts, a pariah, if you will. He never really seemed to be able to fit in with his peers, not at school and not at his job. Something that seems especially important to me is the fact that he was a Boy Scout in his youth. He really took a liking to nature, and it almost felt like a second home to him. His father even said at one point that he felt more comfortable out in the woods than he did indoors. It's August when Jake disappears. It's his birthday, actually, the 21st. Him and his father had agreed the night before to meet at a restaurant to eat, to celebrate, but he doesn't show up. His father shows up at the restaurant first. He takes a seat, he waits for minutes, then hours, then the evening turns to night, and there's still no sign of his son. The restaurant closes, and he's forced to go home. Still no word from his son. This isn't normal for Jake. He always reaches out to his father. They always stay in touch, but there's not really much the father can do for the night, so he goes to bed and worries about it in the morning. That morning, he decides to go by Jake's apartment just to check in on him, but his car isn't in the driveway. This is when he really gets worried, and this is when he calls the authorities. The police, they don't really think much of it at first. He has a history of having ran away as a child, and his coworkers know he tends to forget his phone places, so they don't think it's all too impossible that he just went out on a camping trip or something and forgot to tell his father the day before. His father is especially worried, and despite the cops' reassurances, he knows it's not like his son to flake out on him like this. It's only at the 48-hour mark when a proper investigation is launched. They drive around town and the surrounding areas as well as the park, and they end up finding Jake's car, parked in the woods, right at the edge of the park. They search Jake's car, but aside for a few footprints outside of it, there really isn't any sign of him. They even have a team to search the entire forest, but still, there's nothing. Afterwards, they do what they can to ask coworkers and anyone who knew Jake about where he could be, but they don't get any leads. Days pass, then weeks, then months, and there's still no sign of Jake Walker. he's gone, vanished out of thin air. They searched his apartment as well about a week after he first went missing, and nothing's really out of place there. Everything is as it would have been. His phone is even there, but it's on the nightstand. There's no calls or anything on it that would make them think there's any suspicious thing going on. Because there was so little evidence to base an investigation off of, there wasn't really anything for the newspapers to go off of too, so in the time after this, it's really just speculation and hearsay over what happened, but I have heard that the father, in the years following his son's disappearance, he actually rented out the apartment for as long as he could afford in the hopes that his son would come home. That apartment complex, it's not there anymore. I've looked at it on maps, and I can only imagine the grief that this brings Jake's father. To have known your son for only a short amount of time in comparison to the now, I mean, Jake would have been missing for about as long as his father would have known him by now. That's profound to me. It's sad. It's awful. And because of how sudden his disappearance was and how little evidence there is nothing in terms of closure for his parents. He could be alive or he could be dead. There is no way of knowing. And even if he was found by any chance, it's been so long since he first went missing. It's hard to know if anyone who used to know him would even recognize him anymore. Half his life he's been missing now. He'd be my mother's age by now. He could have been a man by now. He could have had a wife and kids by now. And his father's still caught up on this. He's still convinced his son is still alive. The first newspaper that talked about his disappearance, his father actually issued a statement. He said, "If you're reading this, son, know I love you. You're always welcome back home. You know where we keep the spare key." They put out a reward for anything to do with Jake Walker's whereabouts, but as far as I'm aware, they haven't. There's two main theories for what happened to him. Of course, one being that he's alive. He just skipped town or went to live in the woods or something, and the other theory is, well, that he's not alive. In the park, it's not treacherous really in any way that I know. There's bramble and brush and, things you have to be careful of, like thorns, rocks, but there's nothing too steep or too dangerous that I feel like he could have gotten hurt on. Whatever happened, it feels very, very intentional to me. Now, murder is definitely not common where I am, but I don't know, I feel like I can't really write it off in this situation. The way people use Jake Walker's disappearance when I was brought up to warn us not to go out into the woods alone, or just to warn us not to do anything they didn't really want us to do, it has always led me to believe that something very, very bad happened to him. Now, maybe it's too close to home for me. He went to the same high school I did. My mother knew him. I'm pretty sure they were classmates even, so, maybe I just want to believe he left town and nothing bad happened to him. But I think that's definitely my guess. He skipped town, got out of here while he still could. I mean, I don't want to slam where I live, but I definitely do plan on moving and getting out as soon as I can afford it. Most families are very religious here, very connected to local churches, and I can imagine if you're an outsider of any kind, even a little bit, things can be really tough here, so I definitely understand. Hopefully, wherever he is, he's okay and he's living his best life. I want that for him. But that'll be the end of this week's video. If you do know anything about where Jake Walker is, not that I expect anyone to, you should reach out to the appropriate people, of course, but I hope you found it a little bit interesting hearing about some of my secret town mysteries around here. Thank you for listening. I do appreciate it, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.